In the quiet, picturesque town of Greenfield, life seemed almost idyllic for Richard Thompson. A man deeply rooted in values, he was known as a devoted husband, a loving father of three, and a respected figure in the community. His days unfolded in a comforting rhythm: morning coffee with his wife Laura, school drop-offs, work evening dinners with laughter echoing through their warm, inviting home. From the outside, the Thompsons appeared to be the embodiment of suburban bliss. Richard and Laura, college sweethearts, had built a life together that many admired and envied. Their love story began in lecture halls and campus cafes and blossomed into a seemingly unbreakable bond, solidified by marriage and the arrival of three beautiful children: Emily, Alex, and Lily. To everyone who knew them, Richard and Laura were soulmates, partners in life who had weathered every storm side by side. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect picture, something dark and unsettling had begun to stir. Laura, once warm and deeply attentive, had grown distant. Her gaze, once full of affection, now often seemed vacant. She became increasingly preoccupied, her phone always within reach, guarded as though it contained sacred secrets. Late nights at the office became frequent, and the intimacy that once defined their marriage slowly withered into a hollow formality. Richard, ever trusting and unaccustomed to suspicion, tried to ignore the growing unease. But subtle clues whispered to him in moments of silence. A sharp change in Laura's routine. The way she smiled less. The way her phone lit up with messages she never shared. Doubt, once foreign to him, began to settle like a heavy fog. It wasn't until he reviewed their shared phone bill, something he rarely did, that he noticed a pattern. A flurry of late-night calls and messages to a number he didn't recognize. Still, he held on to hope, clinging to the belief that there must be an innocent explanation. But the illusion shattered completely one quiet evening when, while organizing files on their shared computer, Richard stumbled upon a folder he hadn't seen before. Inside it were a series of photographs, images intimate and deeply personal, clearly never meant for his eyes. The content of those photos pierced through him like cold steel. They weren't just photos. They were a confirmation of his worst fears. Confronting Laura was the most agonizing moment of his life. At first, she denied everything, scrambling for excuses. But the evidence was undeniable, and her facade eventually crumbled. Tearfully she confessed, yes, she had been unfaithful. The affair had been ongoing for years. Richard felt as though the ground had been pulled from beneath him. Her betrayal wasn't just the violation of a vow, it was the destruction of a sacred trust, a life they had built together over decades. But the nightmare didn't end there. As Richard sat alone in the days that followed, his mind spiraled into a darker abyss. A question, unthinkable yet persistent, began to plague him. Were the children really his? The doubt was unbearable. He loved Emily, Alex, and Lily more than life itself. He had held their tiny hands, kissed their scraped knees, stayed up with them through fevers and heartbreaks. But now everything felt uncertain. Driven by a desperate need for clarity, he made the agonizing decision to pursue the truth. Quietly he arranged for DNA testing, one for each child. The wait was excruciating. Each passing day felt like a century. And when the results finally arrived, they shattered what little remained of Richard's heart. None of the children were biologically his. The words felt like a blade carving through his very soul. Emily, the daughter whose first steps he filmed. Alex, who looked up to him with admiration. Lily, who called him her hero. Not one of them shared his blood. The life he had poured his heart into was built on lies, his years of devotion anchored in deceit. The pain was unfathomable, like grieving a death, yet the ones he mourned were still alive, still calling him Dad, with eyes full of innocent love. The emotional devastation soon gave way to anger, to a deep, simmering need for justice. Laura had not only betrayed their marriage, she had robbed him of the truth for over a decade. Richard felt violated, emotionally, financially, morally. With the support of close friends and legal counsel, he decided to pursue legal action. He filed a paternity fraud lawsuit against Laura, seeking not just financial restitution, but a formal acknowledgement of the wrongs done to him. The case quickly became the talk of Greenfield. What had once been a private tragedy unfolded under public scrutiny, every painful detail dissected in courtrooms and whispers. Laura, once the woman Richard adored, now stood opposite him as an adversary. The courtroom echoed with the sobering realities of betrayal, lies, and heartbreak. Richard spoke openly about his suffering, his voice trembling as he relived the unraveling of his family life. Every testimony, every piece of evidence felt like salt in an open wound. The court eventually ruled in Richard's favor. He was awarded a significant financial settlement, a recognition of the emotional and material costs of raising children under false pretenses. But no amount of money could restore what he had lost: the years, the trust, the dreams of fatherhood. In the aftermath, Richard found himself at a crossroads. The verdict brought some justice but not peace. Healing, he realized, would be a far more complex and lonely journey. He began therapy, delving into the labyrinth of his emotions, confronting the trauma head-on. Slowly, painfully, he started to rebuild, not just his life but his sense of self. The children, now aware of the truth, found themselves caught between love and confusion. They still saw him as their father, the man who had raised them with unconditional love. But the revelation had changed everything. Their relationships were strained, complicated by emotions too vast for their young hearts to process. Richard's story is not just one of betrayal, it's a portrait of a man clawing his way back from emotional ruin. It's about what happens when truth explodes the illusion of a perfect life, when love is revealed to be wrapped in layers of deceit. It's about resilience, the kind that is forged in the crucible of heartbreak. Richard didn't just survive his pain. He chose to confront it, to speak his truth, and to seek justice not only for himself, but for the dignity that was stripped from him. His journey is a haunting reminder that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal, and that from the ashes of betrayal, a stronger, more self-aware person can emerge.